session Q&A with Niels. So I'm just waiting for my contact person today. It is Jason Reynolds. Jason, here he is. So Jason is our head of sports from Lanserhof at the Arts Club in London. You probably know him from the Lanserhof at the Arts Club account. Oh, here he is.
Hey guys.
Jason, hi. And Jason
I'm here. How's everyone doing?
Hello, Jason. Can you hear me?
Well, I had to keep Bert in, of course.
So, hello,
Yeah,
Bert. So the listeners are now aware of the story, the background of Bert, the giraffe at the background. And everybody else is knowing it because it is always in a different context when you have your live sessions in the Lanserhof at the Arts Club account, haven't you?
Yeah, I like to keep the background a little bit evolving, should we say, mix it up a little bit, dress him up a little bit, put some sunglasses on him. Look, it's just a little bit of fun to, rather than just looking at the wall of my flat, I want to keep it a little bit entertaining for everyone as well.
I love it. I'm a big fan of your giraffe, and yeah. Anyhow, we have received some questions, questions which probably haven't been answered in our podcast episode from Monday, so maybe we can start right now with a question we have received already. Nevertheless, the listener also can ask question while we are talking here. So my first question is: what is better for fat burning, running or power walking? And if power walking, what period of time do you need to go for? Should you doing it on an incline, etc.? If jogging is the interval the best, or just a consistent pace of 45 minutes? So a big question, all about running at the end.
Yeah. Well, look, I think whatever you're choosing to do exercise-wise, if your design is about fat loss, then it's not as simple as which exercise is better than the other. It's actually about how metabolically you use your body. So if you're not used to doing a lot of activity, then again, a good power walk is going to be more and more calories burned for you. And then that's going to result in more fat loss. If, however, you're quite active, then you might need to run. And it's about kind of going through those stages to challenge yourself. Make sure that that's what's happening. Ultimately, your body will do adapt. So if you run quite consistently, if you're then planning on running to burn body fat, you need to then get into a position where you're challenging your body a little bit more, so it can't stay on that steady state. You got to push it a little bit more. So doing intervals is high intensity interval training is a great kind of example of this. You can do that out running. Every time you get to a lamppost, you run one, you jog one, you walk one, and just repeat that over and over and over. And I promise you'll get tired real quick. That's probably the easiest way to describe it. It's not one exercise is better than the other. It's about what challenges you to a point where you're going to burn more calories.
Okay, so is there a possibility to measure it, what is right for you? So should you measure your pulse or something like that?
Heart rate is a really good way of doing it. You can, from a training point of view, having Apple Watches, Garmin's, or even a Polar strap, something like that, they're all good options. You're looking to increase your heart rate considerably. There's no specific number. There is some very basic calculations on where you should get your heart rate to, but ultimately get to a challenge so you really feel your heart rate raised, and then let it drop to a certain point and then go again. That's a great way of training. So it might be that you only run between your heart rate being, from 110, and once it reaches 150, then you rest until it gets back to 110. A little bit of something called heart rate variability training as well. There's, you can go into incredible depth for it, but a really basic way of doing it is let it drop to a certain level, work hard until you reach a level, and then kind of allow it to continue in that way, and your body will adapt in that process.
This is what I have realized. At the moment, I'm just testing a new device called Whoop Band, and it's measuring your heart rate variability, and it's It's showing that the way I'm running, because I have a little bit time at the moment to run on a regular basis, and
Of course.
that it is not really challenging anymore when I'm doing it in the same way I'm doing it every day. So, and this is what the movement tells me, that the day strain, this is how it's called there, is not really high, even if I'm running for an hour. But is there a kind of minimum time you would say before you start to burn any fat?
What? Fat burning as a topic is a horrifically butchered topic, and as a trainer, I fend that question on a daily basis in the gym. Fat burning ultimately is a position you're going to get in when your body demands energy, and when you're in a position generally when you're in a calorie deficit, that your body's going to get to a position where it's going to need it. So if the amount of fat you can burn, I guess, is decided by where you are in a calorie point of view. So if you're going to run for an hour, you're going to burn a lot of calories doing that. So it's going to be a lot of energy. So you can't be in too big a deficit. Otherwise you go too far into a deficit, and then that gets quite negative. So it's tricky. It's not as simple as saying you need to run for X amount of time. What I would generally suggest is that it's a process of building it up. So you might start with a 15-minute run. So, have your diet in the way that it might be a slight deficit, run for 15 minutes every day. And if at the end of that week, you feel good, it feels comfortable, you don't feel particularly fatigued, you're sleeping okay, maybe increase it a little bit. And then over 2 weeks and over 3 weeks, you can start to then think about how you're changing your physique. Are you starting to lose any weight? Are you starting to notice any change? And then over 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, then you're going to be able to pick up that change over a long period of time. Any idea of losing, changing your physique in 4 weeks or 3 weeks, or, you might see it on a magazine, you lose 7 pounds in 7 days is rubbish.
Yeah. So it's in Germany, the magazine Lanserhof is more or less always have the same headline. It's promising always that you will get six-pack. It just varies in the time. So the six-packs in 3 weeks, and 8 weeks, and 6 weeks, but it's always how to get a six-pack. How do I get a six-pack?
Yeah, exactly. Well, again, for men to get a six-pack, very simple. It's about the percentage of body fat percentage you're at. People always say the muscles are there. Everyone has those muscles, varying degrees of size, I guess, in terms of their strength of the muscles. To be able to see them, ultimately, for a man, you're looking at getting down probably somewhere in the low teens to 10% to start to be able to see them, and to get a very, very vivid and very visual six-pack. Then you're talking about getting down into individual single figures. For females, it's a little bit more tricky to get to a point. Again, anatomically for females, it's never quite as vivid, unless you get into a very, very low body fat percentage, where we're talking sort of 12 or 13%, which really should only be for competition. That's really the only reason to be there, and someone would be there for 1 or 2 days. You're not really going to get there and stay there if because hormonally for females, that's a car crash if you end up at that point. For what will happen ultimately.
So at the end, you can say, when I see other people with a six-pack on the beach, I can say, yeah, but at the end they are not healthy.
Not quite. But for females, it's a balancing act. It can be really tricky. For guys, if guys are down there, guys, we have testosterone. It kind of bails us out of everything. So guys on the beach with a six-pack, that guy's done his work. He's eaten clean. He's trained hard. He can be someone to look up to from what you want to achieve. For females, again, obviously look up to them, be inspired by it, but sometimes it's not always an indicator of great health, being very, very skinny and having a low body fat percentage, especially if the muscle mass doesn't go with it.
We have received already some additional questions. I'm starting with the first one. Do you burn more calories with cardio or weight training or HIIT? So
it's a little bit dependent on what's included in them. Generally, fat burning and whatever that entails for individuals is again comes down to that point of calories in, calories out. A 20-minute HIIT session will be tough, and you'll burn some calories, and you'll get something called EPOC, which is basically how you burn calories post-exercise, so post-exercise oxygen consumption. Weight training, however, will also increase your muscle mass. So that will burn calories and burn body fat, but also will increase your muscle mass. So when people talk about lowering their body fat, often that's an aesthetic change that they want to make. And increasing muscle mass needs to go hand in hand. Otherwise, we get what we call a soft physique. We end up not having any shape, and that's not a positive. No one ever burns body fat and then feels they look great. It's when they have muscle mass, and again, having a six-pack, having arms to go with it, having a nice back, whatever it might be, glutes, hamstrings, the muscle mass has to be part of that. So high intensity can be part of it. Weight training, cardio, actually all needs to be a part of a training plan. It can't just be one part of it.
Okay, all right. So we have another question. What is better for your daily exercise? 1 hour walk or 30-minute run?
Again, it's quite individual. It's not necessarily that one's right and one's wrong. It depends where you are. If I went for an hour walk, someone that's very, very active, it wouldn't physically be particularly demanding for me. Whereas for some people, an hour's walk will be enough. They'll need to go home and sit down for a while. So it is individual. It's getting to a point where you're getting some fatigue, you're getting some challenge. And again, that's where you can use your heart rate, or just use your personal best. If you run for an hour and you do 10 kilometers, then maybe the next one, see if you can, get a little bit further, do 10 and a half, see if you can increase your pace a little bit weekly, and continue your challenge that way. And that's how you're going to burn more calories and not plateau on the same level.
I just realized recently that it is a different category of exercise. So I'm really used to run, and I'm also used to run, I don't know, 50K, 20K. This is no problem for me. Then I joined a marathon walk, not run, a marathon walk. And it was really challenging for me because after 15K, I was totally exhausted. I had pain everywhere. So I had no problem with running 50K, but I had problems with walking 50K. So it's really different.
It's a different way of using our bodies, and that's that adaptation process that our bodies go through. For someone that runs, the muscles you use when you run compared to when you walk are different. The way you use your hamstrings, your glutes, the way you use the muscle in your feet, maybe the muscle in the front of your shin and your calf. Again, they're all different. There's different motors of controlling that projection and movement forward. So it's different. Don't expect because you can run, you can walk, and vice versa. Same for cycling. A lot of people who are fit go, I can ride a bike for ages, and then they'll get 20 kilometers into it and their hips are going to fall off because they just can't deal with it. So again, whatever exercise people do, it's about grading it and slowly progressing it.
We have another question. What do you think of vegetarian keto without or medium dairy and some fish for 40 plus?
Oh, that's a very, very specific question. Very specific.
Very specific, yeah.
Keto diets are tough. That's probably the first thing I would say. If you can commute to work into, say, you live in London or whatever, you commute into work, you travel, have children, live a busy life, keto is difficult. That's one way to describe it. There are some positives about being low carbohydrate. High protein, high fat diets have some really, really good research into them. And in fact, most people, when they have carbohydrates, we have quite bad carbohydrates. So we have, we'll go to Pret and buy a sandwich. We'll have pasta, things that we don't necessarily store particularly well as a good energy source. In the long term, pasta and some carbs can be a great short term if you're going to go sprinting, but if you're having them for lunch, then we're just going to sit in the office. That's not a good idea. As a vegetarian keto, again, that's even harder because then you're taking away the large options for how much protein you get in, and then you have to have a lot more beans, a lot more pulses. It might be tofu, things like that, or you have to supplement your protein a lot more as well. So it requires a lot more in depth to it. Generally, if someone's going to go needs to make these kind of specific changes to their diet, that's where you need, go and see a nutritionist, go and learn from someone what's really perfect for you. Because reading and saying, oh, keto's great, might not work best for you and how your body works. So go and get blood tests, go and do allergy tests, go and structure all these things. So you're going to put a lot of effort in. You want to make sure it's the perfect thing for you.
All right.
And specifically for someone who's perhaps a little bit older as well, especially as an older female, definitely the protein amount's really, really important and really often undervalued. If you're training, that protein amount's really, really key and important. So definitely go and get all the information you can from a nutritionist or a dietitian and really learn about what works best for you.
What would you say? How important is sleep when you're trying to get in a better shape? Is another question.
I touched upon it very briefly when we did the podcast. That in this lockdown period, everyone probably is sleeping better, which is hopefully a good thing. Maybe going to bed a little bit later, but hopefully not having to get up quite as early. So hopefully everyone's getting more sleep. If you're not, this is the greatest, the greatest opportunity we have to get more sleep. Sleep is the time when we create human growth hormone. I mentioned this, as I said, in the podcast, and that's when we do a lot of repair and rebuild for muscle tissue, also for nails, hair, skin. So it's incredibly important. Obviously, it's great you need energy. You're going to recover, you're going to rest and recuperate when you sleep, but also how we rebuild and how we get stronger and fitter. So if you're training really hard, but getting 5 hours sleep, you're really limiting the positive effect of your training. And probably the bit that is the most important is, again, that hormonally, that can get people a little bit out of their system. Females especially rely on human growth hormone a lot more hormonally to do those things. So females that are getting less sleep, their results from training are really, really limited. And as a trainer, that's one of the things I have to fight against really considerably, is encouraging that. Like, people can train hard, they can eat well, but if they're getting 5 hours sleep, that doesn't really matter, because you're just cutting the legs off of what you're doing. So it's all part of that holistic lifestyle, is really key. But the sleep is a big one. You can't cheat it. You can't get around it.
What about the fact when you have, for example, a very exhausting workout, running or weightlifting or whatever, very late, and then you go exhausted directly afterwards to bed? Is this recommendable?
It's okay. You can work really hard and sleep. The two things that are probably most important are how fueled you are, and your recovery from training. So if you're going to work out, and quite literally work out, get tired and go into bed, you're going to wake up pretty sore in the morning, because throughout your workout, you're going to produce carbon dioxide, lactic acid, and lots of other byproducts of exercise. That's going to stay a little bit within some of your muscle tissue. Your lymphatic system will drain away quite a lot of it, but you'll wake up stiff. Your muscles will ache a little bit first thing in the morning, because you haven't gone through a process of, we call it cooling down. That's usually the term used, but that's just being mobile afterwards to make sure that we're not going to have any dysfunction the next day.
All right.
In terms of food, definitely make sure you're fueled as well. If you're not training, if you're not eating beforehand, you need to make sure you get some fuel in afterwards, some protein. Again, that's going to help you to repair and rebuild post-training.
Once we go back to the gym, how should we approach the training?
Well, Lanserhof have an ethos which is everything I stand for, and is part of the reason I'm at Lanserhof, and that's a really specific and individual approach to training. Too often training is random. People do what they read in Men's Health. They do what they see a social media influencer do, and that's just not for them. Too often people just follow something else. But we are individuals. How we work, what we need, is different. So we obviously have a system where we do a lot of testing in different ways to test people's core strengths, their dysfunctions, their imbalances, find out where they're good, where they're bad, on very, very accurate levels, find out about body composition. Those are the things that are going to help us analyze whether your training is working. If we don't do those things, we don't really know. Yes, we can work out whether you weigh a little bit less or a little bit more, but that's not the only thing in training. We want to make sure that people are living longer, living healthier, less pain, and able to do more. And that's where I get the greatest joy, is taking people, not necessarily because someone's got a six-pack, but taking people that might not be able to do a lot training wise, and take them from being very basic to becoming very, very good and very, very active, no pain. That's what we're doing as trainers primarily. Yes, people want to change their physique, but that comes with being able to train harder. And if you move great, no injuries, you get the best out of your training, you're as efficient as possible, and then it's much simpler. It's a much easier way of doing it.
Yeah, but let's assume that Eski is not from UK, from London, maybe she's from, I don't know, Bratislava. Then what should she do in Bratislava when she going back to the gym? Again,
pretty much anywhere in the entire world, there will be personal trainers, and there'll be good ones, and there'll probably be some not so good ones as well. But ultimately, it's find someone with a good background, good experience, who understands what it takes to change someone's physique and to help them achieve their goals. And then you want to find somewhere that has information and has technology, or the awareness to understand when those things are changing. If you're just training at home all the time, that's okay. You can buy scales for the bathroom that help you analyze your body fat percentage. You can take a guard. You've got your watches, your wearables, your phone. They can track whether your heart rate's dropping quicker or whether your resting heart rate's staying lower. So we live in a wonderful technology world. Use it. Don't be overawed by it, but use it to know whether you're progressing or not. That's a good way to think about it.
Mm-hmm. For someone who doesn't have good cardio, what introduction would you suggest to build it up?
I mentioned one earlier when I talked about a little bit about high intensity, and that's using landmarks. So most people could use lampposts, or if you're in a park, you can use trees or anything really, and go through a process of running one, walking one, running one, walking one, and start to build it up. And then you might go, I'm going to run 2, walk 1, run 2, walk 1, and that allows you to have a progression that you can repeat. It's not to say you want to do it over and over and over again. You might get you want to change your route, your running route, for instance, and have a bit of a fresh view, as it were. But if you do the same route for a week, on the first day, take it a little bit easier. Walk 1, run 1, walk 1, run 1, and then the third day, progress it up. See if you can run 2, walk 1, and use those sort of positions to give you a landmark for it.
This is exactly how I started when I getting back to run. So I started really with 2 minutes running, 1 minute walking, 2 minutes running, 1 minute walking, just because it's so frustrating when you're starting to run and after 4 minutes, 5 minutes, you're totally exhausted and you just, I don't know, have less than 1K length behind you, and then you have to go home. So it's not really a good kind of training. So I really started like this: 2 minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 1 minute, and then 3 minutes, 1 minute, and so on. And then I know after 1 week I had it was the first time that I was able to run for 20 minutes, but it's going pretty fast. The improvement is pretty good.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of science that suggests that doing an interval-based workout, even if it's running to walking, has some more benefits than just doing steady state running. Again, steady state running we can adapt very, very quickly to, and we can get to a level playing field, and it doesn't do a huge amount for us physically. We burn calories, of course, but it doesn't give us a huge increase in what we're doing metabolically, whereas doing those intervals means you can work harder for periods and then taper it off with the walk, work harder, taper it off. So it's a good way to introduce yourself to running, and actually a very good training tool that runners should do more often, rather than just do that steady state. Have a couple of days running steady state a week, couple of days where you're doing those intervals as well, and kind of keep your training quite mixed up.
We have another question. So what would be the best time of the day for exercise to gain the benefits? I think we have spoken already about exercising very late, but is there a really best time you could recommend?
That's something that people are going to have to work out for themselves. There is some research and science that shows that people are best in the afternoon, from 2, 3 o'clock. That's when most, I think, again, I mentioned it in the podcast, that's when most world records are set. But most of us aren't elite athletes. So ultimately it comes down to what we're doing every day. If you're still working during this lockdown period, then you might, getting up and having a workout in the morning might feel really good, wake you up, get you set for your day. But some people, if they start their work early, it might not work. It might be working out in the evening, and that might suit them better. There's no individual, there's no rule. There's no, if you train at this time, you're going to get better results. It's what has to feel better for the individual. I think too often people say, oh, I'm a morning person, I must train that time. If your morning's busy, just make sure you train in the evening. We're creatures of habit, so sometimes we have to break those routines and be a bit flexible.
I just became a morning runner because it's the only time of the day which really belongs to me, because when I decided to stand up earlier, then it's up to me. And furthermore, it's the best time which you probably don't skip because you had a bad day or you had a busy day, or I don't know. So this is the only reason why I'm running in the morning. But I think everybody has to find his own way. We have another question from someone which seems to be very healthy. What are the benefits of exercising in a fasted state?
I thought this question might come up. I was looking forward to this one. Fasted exercise was very, very big a number of years ago. Some initial research into fasted exercise was that being in a fasted state helped you burn more body fat. Your fat oxidation was the term that they used, was increased. I'm delighted to inform you all that that's not really true. Fasted exercise, there's a big meta-analysis done a number of years ago, and a meta-analysis, in case you're not aware, is where people take all the journals, all the research that's done. So there's 40 or 50 research papers done, and they'll analyze all of them together and come up with a general conclusion from those large amount of papers. And the meta-analysis of fasted exercise said that there is no benefit to doing it. If you're on the same amount of a calorie deficit as someone else, you're going to burn no more body fat from being fasted than you would if you didn't. All you're probably doing is putting yourself in a position where you're going to be a little bit grumpier, and actually your performance might actually be a little bit less because you lack a little bit of energy.
All right. So you see that it's all about fat. Should I be doing more abdominal exercises to burn the fat around my waist? Again,
a question I will get, a weekly question that I probably would get in a gym, and a really common one, because people believe it. The idea that we can choose what part of our body to burn body fat from is a myth. So if you do lots of abdominal exercises, you will increase the muscles, the muscle size, the hypertrophy, the muscle size around your abdominals will increase, but your body fat will burn from where your body chooses to, and that's a little bit genetic. It can be a little bit, males and females are a little bit different on this as well. Really commonly that you'll see women store body fat around their hips. Guys tend to take it kind of, maybe you would refer to it as a pot belly, so around the front of it, and that's to protect our sexual organs, for instance. There are reasons why we store body fat in certain areas. Where our lymph nodes are is another one. It's an evolutionary process that we do. But we can't choose where we burn it. So if you get to a point where the last bits of your body fat are perhaps around your hips, don't be discouraged by that. If it's gone from your arms or it's going from your legs, that's just the next place where your body, or one of the last places where your body's going to burn it. You just need to keep progressing. Don't get upset that that's not changing there. Stick with the process. Make sure you're being good with your diet, still being in that calorie deficit, and progressing yourself on.
There's another question concerning cryo or cold showers. What would be the benefits for doing this before versus before exercising versus after exercising?
So cold therapy, again, in the last 5 years or so, has really overtaken heat therapy as the optimal choice pre and post training. Obviously, if you have access to a cryotherapy chamber, they are even better. You can have ice baths. They are absolutely awful. If you've ever had to have one, you will know that they are not fun. And for most people, just having a cold shower is another option. And you can do it pre-training. The cold will basically force increased blood flow, increase more metabolic activity in your body, and it's been shown to help increase the amount of calories you'll burn through training. There's nothing specific to say it's going to be 10%, 10%, 5%, whatever it's going to be. We just know that individually there will be a little bit of an increase in the amount of calories you're going to burn for doing that. So again, for most people, getting some sort of cold therapy in pre-training can help boost your how metabolically active you are. But you still have to make sure that you're prepared for your exercise. Obviously, if you get cold before your exercise, you need to make sure you're warming up properly. Make sure you're not going into it. And your body's prepared, tendons, ligaments, muscles are ready for exercise. That's always the case. In terms of doing it post-exercise, you're then doing it to reduce soreness. So that, again, the increased blood flow that you get from cold therapy or from cryotherapy, ice baths, cold showers, again, increase blood flow, and that will increase your lymphatic drainage system and how it functions. So you'll actually get rid of those byproducts of exercise a little bit quicker. So you'll get rid of some carbon dioxide, lactic acid, things like that. You'll get out of it. The only caveat to that is that some of those byproducts, and it's hard for us as a industry, the science is still ever changing on this, is to understand why. But some of that soreness that we get post-exercise, some of those byproducts are actually important as part of the process that we get in muscle hypertrophy, so building muscle. So sometimes reducing that soreness can actually reduce the increase in muscle size. So if you're trying to get big arms, cold therapy afterwards is actually going to be limiting your response. So again, it's about understanding when is the right time to do it. And again, that's why it's important in this world to have people that experts are out training to give you this information.
So I can just say from my personal experience that having a cryo therapy after some exhausting training for a challenge or something like that, you are recovering much faster. For me as a runner, I made this experience. And I also can say, in comparison to a very cold shower, for me, the cryotherapy is perceived less cold. So because a very cold shower is so close to your skin, it is really wet, and this is so different. So at least a cold shower can have never less than 1 degree, 0 degree, because then otherwise it would be frozen. But having an experience in a cryotherapy with minus 110 degrees, for me the perception was that it's warmer in comparison.
Yeah, it's the moisture in the air, and that's why ice baths are, if you've ever had to do one, they're really, really not fun at all. And cryotherapy is optimal because there's no moisture, so you don't get the negative skin response. So you can actually, obviously, you can have it much colder in the room, but it doesn't feel as physically cold. You're still getting the same internal response, but your skin doesn't feel as cold. And that's a really wonderful thing for allowing us to get to colder temperatures. And research shows that sort of 100 degrees, minus 110 is a really optimal number. You can't go, cryotherapies are not going to get much colder in the future because the research into colder temperatures actually ends up not being any more positive than around that 110% mark as it is.
The news question here is thoughts on incorporating turmeric. To be honest, I don't understand the question. Probably you do.
Again, I think turmeric has certainly has some reported benefits. Again, the research into turmeric and some of the things, there are some things that it is helpful for. I think it's also probably a little bit overdone. I think people still think it's a little bit of almost a get out of jail free card, and you can take that and it will cure you of everything. By all means, incorporate it into your day. If you have turmeric tea, some people have turmeric lattes, things like that. If you enjoy the taste, then absolutely continue to do so. But I can't sit here as a trainer and say that this bit of research says turmeric will make you live longer. I think it's a part of people being healthy in general. I think a lot of people that are going to get to the point where they're going to start having turmeric are probably thinking, okay, well, I'm going to have vegetables, I'm going to have a good clean diet, I'm going to train, I'm going to do those things. So I would definitely say, it's not magic, but if you can use it, it's not a bad thing.
All right, the newest question here right now is thoughts on it being harder for a vegetarian to train as opposite to someone who incorporates meat into their diet.
It's not necessarily going to be harder for someone who's vegetarian to exercise and to perform, because again, that's a little bit more about the amount you consume, the energy you consume. In terms of the outcomes post-training, the protein amount that we get in our food is paramount to increasing muscle tone and to good function, of course. A rough guide would be you're looking at somewhere about 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight is a really optimal number. So if I said to most people, do you get anywhere between 100 and 150 grams of protein a day? Most people don't get anywhere near that, especially when, and that's something that I have to consistently talk to my clients about, that actually you need to increase that number. That's why you're not getting results, is that your body will only be able to function as well as you fuel it, and protein is an incredibly important part of that. If you're going to try and get 150 grams of protein without meat, as from vegetable supplies, that's really tough. You're going to have to eat a lot, the actual amount of food you're going to need is going to be very, very high. And as a result, the amount of calories you're going to consume are very, very high. So that's when supplementing might come into it. So it might be about getting vegetarian protein shakes, because that you'll need those to supplement and to keep that number that high.
Yeah, I find it quite interesting. Probably you have seen these documentary, The Game Changers, and there's this one quote where this strong man says, "How have you become so strong like an ox without eating any meat?" And then he said, "Have you ever seen an ox eating meat?" So this is for me a quite good one. Nevertheless, what you said is
that might be my least favorite quote from that entire documentary, and for a lot of people it hits home. And it's perfect for that documentary, because that documentary was really aimed at promoting a vegan and vegetarian lifestyle, and I don't mind that. There's plenty of information out there that is that's very meat orientated, and there's some on both sides, and that's not a bad thing. But we are different animals to oxes. We don't have many stomachs. The way we need food in certain ways is very different. We literally don't sit and eat grass all day. We don't eat grain all day, things like that. So we're very different. We can't compare. It's apples and oranges. It's just not. It's funny, and it's quite an impactful quote, but it doesn't relate to us as human beings at all. There's been some really good debates on a few podcasts about the Game Changers, and there's some, again, really good information. And I think the key thing to take away from it is how much the quantity and the quality is so important. And there's no major research that says that good meat is bad for you. There's loads of research that says that processed meat, if you're going to go and buy a cheap lasagna from the supermarket that you put in a microwave for 2 minutes, that's going to be really bad. That's not good for you. Your body's not going to like it. It's going to be negative for you. But going to a butcher, getting some, organic, grass-fed beef, for instance, doesn't have negative effects. There's no, there are some studies with meat regarding things like bowel cancer and stuff, and again, they're still very early. There's nothing that says, boom, you can't eat meat, because if that was the case, we wouldn't be selling it. So don't take a documentary that's aimed towards that with a little pinch of salt, but use these documentaries to start to gain a bit of an inquiring mind, and then speak to trainers, speak to experts in these fields, and learn more about it. But again, it's about being individual.
Yeah, definitely. But I must really say, for me, it really also changed my view on plant-based diet, because it was for me the first documentary, the first time that I've seen something which is just focusing on the benefits, what's in for me, instead of you shouldn't eat this, it's bad for the environment, it's bad for the animals, it's bad for your karma. I don't know. At the end, you have to decide if you care about it. But this is really something which is just promising. It's better for you and what's in for me. And this is what I really liked on this, again, change of perspective in a way.
Yeah, and again, that's the key. The key to it is, again, don't necessarily watch it with the idea and come out and say, oh, meat's bad, plants are good. But just understand that what we can get out of plants is better than what most people think. I still, from what I've read and the scientists I listen to and what the research that I've read into, that still having some meat as part of a diet is very much optimal for most people, or certainly plant-based food, shall I say, and animal-based food. So it can be eggs, it can be fish, and that's definitely something that I don't want people to watch that documentary and say, oh, I can't touch meat again. I'd also say, take another little pinch of salt would be a little bit about how the athletes that we see there that are in the documentary, so Djokovic, Lewis Hamilton, Arnold Schwarzenegger, for instance, they're people at the top of their sport who have become vegan and vegetarian in that process. They weren't vegan and vegetarian necessarily through that process. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger is the one that's most amusing, because he quite literally would have eaten a farm a week, and maybe this is controversial, but he probably took a few extracurricular substances to help him become the athlete he was. So I think it's a little ironic of him to tell people not to be a bit more optimal to do plants. But again,
anyhow, he's a good promoter for this subject. So this is,
of course. He's the most famous bodybuilder.
Anyhow, we shouldn't speak too much about the Game Changers. We have another question from, when do you think the club in London will open? So I don't know, honestly. I have some hopes that it will be some new announcement by the end of the week. So the good thing is that we are still open with the doctor services, and so it's at least good to have some life in the building and some exchange with our members and also with the non-members. And I think we are all looking to have some possibilities to open the gyms. I just can say it here from Germany, we are probably 2 weeks ahead from the situation in the UK, and we still can't use our gyms at the moment. So I would say within the next 4 weeks, it's not very likely that you are allowed to use the gym.
Yeah, we don't. I think someday, I think we are due to get an update from our Prime Minister about it. So, but in the meantime, you have my live classes, so people can still train.
Definitely, definitely, with you and with Bert.
Of course.
Of course. So there's another question: is it good to drink raw milk for adults? Grass-fed cow milk.
Ooh, that's a very specific question, and to be honest, I'm probably not the best person to answer that question. I don't know specifically. I know there's been lots of conversation about as adults whether we should be drinking cow's milk because of how the constituency of it necessarily for people that should be taking it only when they're growing, like calves have it to grow and they stop when they get older. And there is some good information into that. I certainly don't think there's anything, I've not seen anything sort of concrete that said that adults it's negative for. I think it's something that we have done for a very long, good amount of time now. And I don't know if necessarily there's negatives. I think a lot of people, there's some vitamins and some minerals that are in milk that people might not get otherwise. So again, it's a balance. If you can have a nice healthy diet, milk or then I think that's a good idea. Otherwise, I can't tell you not to do it. I also couldn't say if I know there's anything necessarily bad about it.
I really like this, again, another sentence from the plant-based diet guys, which saying, not your mom, not your milk. So it's, I don't know. I'm honestly must say I haven't had any milk for many years because I don't know, I just don't like it so much. I'm a big fan of this Oatly milk, so especially the one from the company Oatly, but there are probably a lot of other good alternative milk opportunities. Nevertheless, I don't think that we should focus here a little bit more on sports and things we know for sure. And I'm pretty sure that you have a stronger opinion about the next question. What supplements would you recommend for people training?
Oh, that's a good one. Supplementing can be really individual, but there are 2 supplements that I would recommend that pretty much everyone takes if they're training. And the first one is creatine. Creatine is a supplement that is incredibly cheap. It's arguably the cheapest supplement you can buy. You could buy it in incredible bulk for a very small price. And it quite literally has 0 side effects.
Really?
Taking the creatine effectively allows you, and I won't be too technical about it, but it basically allows you to train harder. If your maximum amount of repetitions on a leg press is 5 repetitions at 80 kilograms, if you supplement creatine, it will increase that what we call a buffer. So it'll allow you to work a little bit harder, and you'll be able to get 1, maybe 2 more repetitions in it. It allows you to work harder.
So it's a pre-workout supplement.
Yeah, take it before you work out. Yeah.
How long before?
An hour before, something like that is absolutely
an hour. Really?
Get it into your system. Yeah, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to do it 5 minutes before or anything like that. Just take it, before you head to the gym and make sure it's in your system. Your body will keep it there for a little while. Creatine is a substance produced by your kidneys, and again, increasing it is great. And it's probably, and I'm fairly certain, if it's not number 1, it's definitely number 2 of the most researched supplements ever. You can find so much information about it, and there is nothing negative. Everyone should be taking it.
Really, and haven't got any experience with it, and even when, I've seen it sometimes, but I've never tried it. So
I will give you a prediction, Niels, that when we finish this call, you will go online and you'll buy some creatine, and then you'll take it, and you'll take it whilst you go running, and then it'll take, once there's a little bit of progression still involved, but when you go running, you will be able to run just that little bit faster for that little bit longer. You'll push a little bit harder, and you'll run a little bit better. I mean, that's my prediction. So I want to know next week. I want to see a post from you running a little bit further, a little bit faster. Okay.
Okay.
And you can thank me in the post as well.
Okay. I'll do so.
But yes, definitely 100. And then the second.
And I also I think it's the last day is until tomorrow to join the Lanserhof challenge. Huh?
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Maybe I should organize some creatine for this.
I think so. It's a good challenge. It's tough. If you haven't done it, but it's a playing card workout of all 52 cards, and it's tough. It's a good workout though. It's often when we're just doing a lot of body weight training, people might not be pushing themselves too hard. So this is a good way of really challenging yourself and really pushing your barriers.
What was your time?
20 minutes 21, I think. So something around the 20 minutes 20 seconds, something around that time. So
okay, with or without creatine?
With creatine, of course.
Okay.
I can't preach to you if I don't do it myself. That's not who I am. The second supplement that I would definitely recommend everyone takes, and this is more of a pre-workout, would be caffeine.
Okay.
So again, caffeine will only help you be more metabolically active. So again, in terms of you can help burn more calories, but also it's a stimulant, so it'll actually drive you to be able to challenge yourself a little bit more in terms of brain function. So your dexterity, your proprioception, your control is increased a little bit with it, and your performance goes with that as well. So that's something you need to take quite close to training because the effect is much quicker. But certainly something it doesn't, and I wouldn't necessarily say you have to have a coffee or a latte or something because it's difficult to have those things and then go straight into training. So you can supplement caffeine in a tablet form, and that's absolutely a good idea.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that's very important is that you will also see tablets that are marketed as sort of fat burners, for instance, and they often have a lot of caffeine in. And there's no real difference. They're just marketed as fat burners because they have a bit of caffeine in. Don't pay extra. Just buy caffeine tablets or caffeine powder and have it with water. It does exactly the same thing. And you can't. It doesn't help. Those things don't help you burn more body fat. By the way, just want to drop that in. Make sure everyone understands.
Okay, but it also could be that you have an espresso or is it not enough coffee?
It's absolutely enough. Yeah, it's absolutely enough caffeine, especially in espresso. Again, I wouldn't obviously recommend generally having a lot of milk because then getting into your training, it's probably won't be that comfortable on your stomach. But again, if you can have an espresso and you're used to having them and you can train, then absolutely not a problem at all.
And would you recommend it for both for weightlifting and cardio training?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no reason you shouldn't do it for either.
All right, sounds great.
Yeah.
Another one. So we have now 2 supplements.
They're the two. They're the main 2 that I would recommend. I do think that most people when they're training are probably going to want to supplement protein, get a protein powder of some description or protein bar or whatever it might be. Again, whether you have that vegan, vegetarian, or you get it from animal sources, that's very individual, whatever works for you. But again, look for one that gets a good amount of protein and gets you up to the number you are. One very important thing as well is that you also see on supermarket shelves that you can buy like protein Mars bars. That doesn't count. That's not real. That's marketing. That's a fitness industry that's booming, and the sweet industry has decided to piggyback and tell people that Mars bars can be for exercise. And they used to say,
but honestly, I must say, looking at all the different options on protein, I must really say that I haven't found any which are really clean in a way. So clean means for me that on the one hand they are tasty, so that you're really willing to drink them, but on the other hand, which doesn't consist of I don't know, sugar or alternative sugar or some other artificial flavors, or I don't know. So for me, it is pretty hard to find good ones.
Yeah, I would agree. Generally, I would suggest if you're buying one expecting that they taste good, you should lower your expectations immediately. It's a means to an end. Don't look at it as this protein shake's got to taste really great, because if that's going to happen, you're going to be having to have a protein shake that's got lots of other ingredients of chemicals and things in it, sugars and things that aren't real, are refined, and that's doing one really good thing for your body by adding a negative that's not the best way to do it.
No.
So generally with that, there are some cleaner proteins out there. Generally, whey proteins have by proxy a little bit more taste to them. They're perhaps a little sweeter. Grass proteins, rice proteins, for instance, hemp proteins, they generally don't taste particularly great. But again, ultimately, if I had to have one, what I would do is I would mix it and just drink it all as swiftly as I could and get it over and done with, and then look forward to my workout. I wouldn't try and, I don't want to suggest people have a bad relationship with it as a food or something that we take into our bodies, but it is something that should just be, don't look at it for enjoyment. It's just something that we need. It's a supplement. Get it in, train, get your results. If you're trying to make it nice, the protein bars probably are the easiest way, because they're generally like a little chocolate bar. And again, if that's something you're comfortable eating in terms of what it's got ingredient wise in, again, there are some very clean ones. Again, they're great ways to do it, and they're probably a little bit easier than taking a powdery drink that sometimes when you shake them, they get a bit clumped together. And you research and find the option that works for you, or have a protein source. So some people can eat eggs. Take a few hard-boiled eggs, a couple of those before you train. Not right before you train, that would be a terrible idea, but an hour and a half before you train, great idea.
All right.
It doesn't always have to be a protein shake, but just supplement your protein in some way, shape, or form.
I have two last questions which we have collected in advance. The one is, I have been training at home since the lockdown started. At first, I felt like I was losing weight and getting stronger, but the last few weeks, I felt like I've plateaued. Why has this happened, and how do I fix it?
We talked a little bit about the plateauing in your training earlier, about not progressing, and often the way most people, and as a trainer, a progression of exercise can often be the amount of resistance that you're doing for an exercise. So it might be, you put a little bit more on your shoulders when you squat. It might be that you run a little bit faster on the treadmill. We use that resistance to increase your work. And at home, if you're just doing things with your body weight, it's tough to then increase that load. It's tough. You obviously don't want to increase your body weight to make the load harder. That would be a little bit counterintuitive. So it's about finding ways to progress yourself. So it may be that you add in a more repetition, so more volume. Generally, that's one way of doing it. If we're increasing muscle mass, volume is very, very key for that. If it's about burning body fat, again, your body's just used to what you are doing, so you've got to take it to that next step. So again, if you don't take caffeine, for instance, again, take that. That'll again be something that's going to help your body work a little bit better. But it might be about working a little bit faster and then taking a rest, faster and taking a rest, and changing the way you're training. So again, if someone that steady state runs, for instance, that's really common that they end up getting results for a while and then just hitting a bar where their body just knows what's about to happen and doesn't really adapt to it. So you've got to mix it up.
All right. This very quick question: is it possible to give birth a baby in the Lanserhof resort? Unfortunately, not. We are not prepared for this, so it has nothing to do with our subject here. And my last question came from Kate. Kate is one of our colleagues, and she still want to know, why are burpees so popular? So you gave an answer in our podcast that you are not a big fan of burpees, but nevertheless, it seems to be that a lot of people are fans of burpees, especially your colleagues, the other personal trainers. So could you explain why?
I think they're popular because they're really difficult. And I don't want to sound like I'm just trying to slam an exercise here, but they're just really difficult. And the problem with something when you're doing an exercise that can be quite technical and quite difficult at the same time, is that people's form tends to go, and that's where I have a problem with it, is that people end up doing them really badly. and that's ultimately what it comes down to. People do them because they're really hard. Anyone who's ever done one will do 10 and go, okay, that was really horrible. I don't want to do that again. But for most people, if they're just, there's better ways of working hard that don't have the injury risk, don't end up having, positional issues. And that's the way I look at it, for sure.
Okay. So, but you can't really say, so you say they're special, they are challenging, but you can do a lot of mistakes.
For sure. As a good example, and anyone listening to this will attest to it. If I asked you right now to go down on the floor and do 20 push-ups for me, that would, people would feel, you'd feel your arms a little bit, you do 20 push-ups, okay? That's okay. If I then asked you to do 20 squats, okay, it might not be as bad as the push-ups, it'd be okay. And then if I asked you to do 20 jumps, that's exactly the same. You're just not piling it all into a 3-second time frame and doing them as fast as you can. If you're doing it and it's tough because of the intensity, there's loads of other ways to do it that don't have to be as difficult. If I got you to do 50 squats as quickly as you could, that would be the same intensity. Doesn't necessarily make it good or bad, but the intensity is you're driving it. You're driving the difficulty of an exercise. I just suggest that if you're doing exercises, don't do exercises where technically you can really fall apart on them, because that's not a good thing.
I just met 2 days ago one of my colleagues riding on a bike next to me, and she mentioned that she just joined a burpee challenge. The burpee challenge was to make 5,000 burpees in 2 weeks, and on the last day they just made 1,000. Yeah, in an hour and a half, 1,000 burpees. So I'm pretty sure this can't be healthy.
It can't be. It can't. Look, again, whether people necessarily get into.
I was impressed. I was deeply impressed.
Yeah, I mean, look, as a physical feat, that's very. I wouldn't want to do that. That's not gonna. You're gonna really feel that the next day for sure. But it also always comes down with exercise. If you're doing them because you're fit and healthy and you want to do it as a challenge, then okay, I don't mind. But if you're using it as an exercise, if it's prescribed to you as an exercise by a trainer, for me, that's lazy. That's just hard work. That's them just so they can stand there and watch you do it. There's better exercises that help you get more out of your training than doing burpees.
This is why everybody who is listening today should join the Lanserhof challenge. You will find all the details on the Lanserhof at the Arts Club account. You have time until tomorrow. Send us some pictures, send us some postings, and I think you also can win something, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some prize. So if you're here in the UK, then there are some vouchers to use our cryotherapy chamber. We talked about it earlier. So if you've never done cold therapy and you want to give it a go, it is amazing. I promise you, the first time you'll sleep really good as well. That's one thing, really big positive I didn't mention about cold is how well you sleep. But yeah, if you do a good time or I like your effort, then absolutely get involved. We've got a few people that have done the challenge. They've done it with their family, done it with their kids, done it in fancy dress, things like that. So again, want to see a good array of options and see who can do the best.
So last 2 minutes. Thank you very much, Jason. My pleasure. And yeah, hope to talk to you soon.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Nils. Good to meet you.
And thank you for listening.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks everyone.